Welcome to the Nutty Real Estate Professor. My name is Rick Suarez, and I created this site to empower students in their journey towards obtaining their real estate license. Whether it's the sales license or the broker's license, my comprehensive tutoring will help you excel in your studies. Don't forget to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to this site. Together, we will make your real estate dreams a reality. Let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the closing disclosure, especially we're going to talk about the pages, how important it is to know about the pages, right? You're only going to be asked either is it on page 3 or is it on page 2? That's it. There's no page, there is a page 1 and then there is a page 4 and 5, but in the state test, they're not going to ask you. They're only going to ask you about page 2 and page 3, right? You should already know this if you took the class, right? Now, one thing you need to know that the closing disclosure, the questions are at the end. So it's either going to be 91 to 100 or 92 to 100. They're at the end. Now, this is not your math questions. Your math questions are about 7 or 8, and they're spread out throughout the entire 100 questions. Not like when you took the sales test, you had 10 math questions at the very end. No more. Now you have it spread out. However, the closing disclosure questions, they're all at the very end. My advice is to either memorize page 2 or page 3, whichever one rolls off the tongue better for you, whichever one is easier for you, right? I like this one. I memorized 3, even though 3 is longer. And that is because of the prorations, right? The prorations is, you got the real estate taxes, the HOAs, the assumable, and the rents. That's it. Boom, 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 right? So you get the sales price on page 3. You got the binder deposit, which is the escrow deposit. Seller's mortgage payoff is he has a mortgage. It will be shown on page 3. And here are the prorations, property taxes, HOA, assumable, or rent. Also, if there's a new mortgage and how much is owed from the buyer and how much is due to the seller. Page 2, you have the insurance, hazard, and flood. And then you have all the transfer taxes. You have documentary stamps on the deed, documentary stamps on the note, intangible tax on the mortgage, commission, and title insurance. One of the things you need to note is when you see that the closing date belongs to the seller, that means that that day needs to be on the seller side. When you see that the closing date belongs to the buyer, that means that that day needs to be on the buyer's side. So what do I mean? So let's just, it doesn't matter. Here's January 1. Let's say we're closing on May 14, and here's 12/31. So the left side is always going to be the seller side. The right side is always going to be the buyer, right? Because the seller lived before the buyer can live. You follow that? So if the closing date belongs to the seller, I like to put a line right here. This way, when I'm counting the days, I make sure that that 14 is included on the seller side. If it's the buyer's closing date, right, then we do the opposite. We put a line here to make sure that that date belongs to the buyer's side. That's actually the first thing I do. Figure out who is the closing date to, right? Where is it allocated, and how many days are we talking about? But why is this important? You're a broker. That's why. So when you go take the state test, your answers are going to be off by 1 day. So getting this right is extremely important. Now, here's a simple math problem that you could see, and this is not even a math problem. This is just a location problem, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It says the buyer submits a $290,000 offer for a property, and the seller agrees to it. The listed price for the property is $300,000. What is the sales price? And where does it appear on the closing disclosure? So in reality, there's no math here, right? All we have to do is show here, 290,000. This is going to be a credit, right? Seller. And then you have the same 290,000, and we're going to debit the buyer, right? Because the buyer is paying the 290, the seller is receiving, so he gets credit. What's the most important part is the page. This is page 3, right? If I go back up, there it is right there. Let me clean this up so you can see it better. There it is right there, sales price, page 3. Can't go wrong. Got to memorize this, guys. You cannot take it to the test. Just got to know, figure one out. The rest is done. Not that hard to figure out. All right, let me show it to you clean so you can see it better. And there it is, 290,000 credit seller, debit buyer, page 3. All right, so let's look at a real problem. And here's one right here. It's called, the duplex is rented out for $2,000 per month per unit. Now, this is important because it's a duplex. So what are we talking about? We're really talking about $4,000. The closing is July 18th, and the day is owned by the buyer. So how many days do we have in July? We have 31 days. The day belongs to the buyer that's here. This is the seller side. This is the buyer side. I always put a line to make sure that I get that day to whom it belongs to. Why is that important? Because, again, your answers are going to be off by 1 day. 1 day. And then the rent, they have a security deposit. Each unit has security deposit of $2,000. So we know that we have $4,000 in deposit. That we're not touching for now. Just need to add that later on. Please calculate the proration and which page does it go. No problem. So what do we need to do here is we need to figure out how many days. Now, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can start counting from day 18 all the way to 31. That's fine. Or you could do it the way I do it, get 31, subtract by 18, get 13, and then add 1 day, and we get 14 days. Now, why did I add 1 day? Because this day has to be included. Your calculator, when you subtract it, does not include that day. So you must add it back. Then we have to figure out the amount per day on the rental. So we have 4,000 divided by 31. And you have $4,000 divided by 31 is going to be 129,03225. Now, I like to leave every single number. You may not want to. Your instructor may have not told you to. He may have told you go up 4 numbers or 3 numbers. Leave it all. Leave it all. In fact, wait to the very end. Wait till you get to this juncture and then multiply. Do the division by the days, so you have this long number and you can leave it in your calculator. Then all I have to do is multiply times 14 days. And this gives me 1,806 with 45 cents. Now, what do I have to do? I have to add back the $4,000 and it's giving me 5,806.45. Who do we credit? Who do we debit? Well, if the owner owned the property and he picked up $4,000 on the first, which was right here, he's entitled to all the money between here and here, right, to the 17th. But he's not entitled to anything after that. But he collected the $4,000. So what are we doing? We're going to debit the seller the 5,806 with 45. And we're going to credit the buyer the same amount. And what page does this go on? This is the important part. What page does this go on? Well, it's a proration. All prorations are on page 3. That you need to know. That you need to know. Let me show it to you clean so you can understand it better. So here we have July has 31 days. 4,000 divided by 31 is 129.03225. Leave it all, leave it all. Leave the entire answer to get the closest correct answer because you're going to be off by a little bit. And you're going to take a test and you just want to be right? Now, 31 days in July minus 18 equals 13, but you have to add the 18th back because you need to add it back and it's 14 days. Now, 14 times 129.03225 equals 1,806.45. And then you have plus 4,000 in security deposits for both units, right? Because each unit had 2,000. So 2,000 each is 4,000. And then here you're going to add them both is 5806.45, debit seller, credit buyer, 5806.45, and page 3. Okay, let's look at another math problems. Here's a tax proration. So this one is a little longer. This one we have to know the exact calendar from January going forward. All right. So the property's closing date is on August. Now, August is 8/12, and the annual property taxes is $42.50. The day of closing is attributed to the buyer. That means the buyer owns the day of closing. This is the seller side. This is the buyer side. So we have to count until 8/11. How will the prorations for the property taxes be indicated on the closing statement? Well, let's figure out the dates, right? January has 31 days. February has 28 days. March has 31. April has 30. May has 31. June has 30. July has 31. And then August, we just need 11 days. And that equals a total of 223 days. Okay. Now, what do we need to do? We need to divide 42.50 divided by 365 days, because it's the taxes, so it's the entire year. So 42.50 divided by 365. And again, you're going to get a loan number. It's going to be 11.643835. And you're going to multiply that times 223. So times 223. We get a total of 2,596 with 58 cents. Right? Now the question is, what do we debit? What do we credit? Well, obviously you're going to debit the seller and you're going to credit the buyer the same amount. Right? The same amount. What page? Well, it's a proration. We know that all prorations are page 3. That's it. Let me show it to you clean so you can understand it better. Here it is right here, 42.50 divided by 365. This is what we get, 11.643835. Here are the days is January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and August. Learn the knuckle method. If you don't know it, it's a kindergarten thing. Each knuckle represents 31. Each indent represents 30 days, with the exception of February, which is 28. Here's the 223 times the big long number is 2596.58. And it's going to be 2596.58. You're going to debit the seller, credit the buyer the same amount, and is page 3. Notice how this guy and this guy have to match to the penny. Now, keep an eye on that, because you're going to take a broker's test. They may have an answer like this, just to get at you. 48, and then 25, 96, 58. You miss this. Or they'll do 57. You miss the penny. Don't do that, because you will get it wrong. All right, let's go do another math problem. This one we're going to do is a loan assumption. This is one that you may see for sure, right? Because it's not easy to understand, and they're obviously going to go into include it just to see if you can handle it. But real estate closing is set for, again, May 12, and the day, and on that day the buyer takes ownership. So the buyer is going to be charged for that day. The buyer will be assuming the seller's mortgage, which is a monthly payment of $1,850. Including principal and interest. The mortgage payments are made in arrears at the end of each month, utilizing a 365-day method. What is the prorated amount for the assumed loan payment, and how will it be displayed on the closing statement? Well, remember that when he made the payment, the seller made the payment here, right? He paid here. He actually paid what? He paid April. The mortgage. So the next payment is June 1st, and that is for what? May. So you need to know that. So that means May has not been paid, right? So who's lived in the house 11 days? The seller. So the seller has to credit the buyer 11 days of the mortgage. Did you get that? Only 11 days here. The seller has to credit the amount here. not here, here. So far we're looking at 11 days. So then we have to get 1850, and we're going to divide by the month of May. And the month of May has 31 days. And once we divide, we're going to get a long number. 1850 divided by 31 days is going to be 59.677419. And you're going to multiply times 11. And when you multiply times 11, it's going to be 656.43. And this is going to be debit seller, credit buyer, the same exact amount. What page is it? Proration? All prorations are page 3. That's it. Let me show it to you clean so you can understand it better. Here it is right here. It's 1850. Those are the amount of the mortgage. You're going to divide that by 31. You get the long number. Leave the long number. Then you multiply times the days. Why that day? Because 5/1, 5/12. This belongs between here and here is 11 days, right? I didn't need a calculator to know. I just know this is the 11th day, the one before. And obviously it's page 3. Do notice that they're identical. Identical. Prorations must always be identical. Thank you for watching my videos. To access additional information and resources, kindly click the link provided below in the description. I offer study guides to help you pass the state test. In addition, I wrote a book and I created a course that shows you the very basics of this business and how to get started. Both being offered at half price with a coupon code for a limited time. Good luck and may you achieve great things in your real estate career. Until next time, thank you very much.